Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. I'd love to welcome here Albert Bramante, who is a talent agent, also has a Ph.D. in psychology, a certified hypnotist, and an NLP practitioner. That sounds pretty interesting. Sounds like we're going to have a great conversation. Albert, tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you, Kyle, for having me on the show. I work in New York City as a talent agent, represent actors for film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover. That's what I do pretty much full time. I also have a background in psychology. And I was able to kind of combine the two in a sense, which led me to, writing my book, which is Rise Above the Script, which works, kind of deals with actors and self-doubt and self-sabotage, mastering self-sabotage. So that's my background. I mean, been doing this for about 1 years now. I love working with actors and performers.
Has anyone that's been in the business for a long time end up self-sabotaging?
Oh yeah, it's easily I would say it's a tricky pattern, insidious pattern, because we don't realize we're doing it. It's not like a conscious thing that we realize that we're kind of our own worst enemy. And with actors, there's a unique life experience where they're always putting themselves out there and sometimes being vulnerable a lot and not seeing any returns for that. Getting told no a lot of times.
What actually is NLP?
So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's a technology kind of like where it's about modeling human excellence. So it's using language patterns or communication, written and verbal language, to change our neurology or rewire our neurology in a sense to become better and more efficient and more productive. So if we change the language we use, change our thought process, we can then change our neurology in a sense.
Is it basically telling yourself positive things instead of always that old negative? Because I know I find myself speaking negatively.
Yeah, well, it's not just telling yourself positive; it's actually believing it. Because you could say affirmations all day long,
Right.
But if there's no conviction behind it or no belief system behind it, it's not gonna it's gonna be powerless. They're gonna be powerless. And not really mean anything unless you are really, in a sense, saying them with conviction and saying them with what you really mean.
Do you use hypnotism to help enforce that?
Just to some degree, yes. I'm not necessarily a traditional hypnotist, where I'm not going to put people in trance automatically, and then But what I often do is work with limiting beliefs in a sense and shifting those. Because I believe that the power of the words that we use, the power of our interest, is really important.
Do you do that online?
Online, on Zoom or in person in a sense too, if they want to.
Can you mention any actors that you've helped?
Some of the actors I worked with a lot with up and coming actors that have been on or even now currently series regulars on shows. That started off as out of work or just getting out of school. So I work a lot with developmental actors.
Okay. Now, do you ever help anyone outside of the entertainment business?
Oh yeah, I mean I also in addition to this, I've taught psychology for 20 something years at different colleges. So I work with students all the time. And my book, even though, like I said, it's geared towards performing artists, it can really apply to anybody. It deals with self-sabotage. There's a lot of universal strategies in there.
Could you even help someone like me?
Everybody can. No, the key though, I was working with anyone when say, can you help somebody? One of the keys that's really important is the person has to be willing to help themselves. You
Hmm.
know, there's, um, we cannot change free will, of somebody.
Hmm.
So that's a notion that you really can't change people in a sense.
When actually did you get started helping actors?
Well, I started, I would say maybe, 20 plus years ago before I became an agent.
Hmm.
I started, I was dabble a little bit of myself into acting. I was always interested in the arts. I was in the drama club in high school. Took some theater classes and acting classes as electives during my undergraduate training. And I really enjoyed the process. And even though I really don't have the desire to be an actor, I love being, I discovered through all of this that I love being around actors and I love working with actors. And so the natural transition became, well, how can I create a business or start something where I can work with actors, on a level that, is nourishing for me, but, and that can be impactful. So I started, helping out with film festival and started helping on casting, and I would go back and forth with all of that um, through time, and I realized how much I loved working with actors. And I said, 2004, I want to represent. I came to the conclusion maybe I should represent them, and so I started my first company in 2004. And then 2007, I became a licensed talent agent and been kind of doing it ever since.
If I got the timeline right, you started being a talent agent before you got your PhD.
Yes, I would say about 10 years, 11 years before I received my PhD, I became a talent agent. So I already had my master's degree. And when I, received my master's degree, I kind of was under the impression I was going to go just straight through and get my PhD. What I didn't realize at the time how highly competitive PhD programs are. I didn't realize that, and I underestimated, what the challenges were. So I only applied to 4 programs, and unfortunately, I was, turned down with all 4. So now I'm faced with reality. Like, okay, I'm graduating in May with a master's degree. In the fall, I'm not going to be going back to school. So it's time to get, I guess, go into the real world. And after a couple of years, I decided, like, you know, I've already went this far. I might as well finish it. And so I enrolled in a program called at Walden University, which is on degree school. They had a PhD program. So I applied there, got in, and I started, in that program. And then after the first year, we had to start brainstorming ideas for our capstone, our dissertation, which is our final product. And our advisor suggested that we choose something that keeps us up at night. And so I work with actors, and when I first started my business, I couldn't figure out why they were self-sabotaging. And so that started that process. And then when I was like, I'm going to do research and figure out why are actors self-sabotaging. And so that's where my dissertation idea was born. And I completed that. It took me a couple of years. And then eventually, in 2015, I received my PhD. And, my doctoral advisor suggested that I publish the results somehow. It took me several years to do that. So then in 2024, I, publish my book, which is loosely based on the work of my dissertation.
Mm. Did you find maybe someone out there that you saw potential and you were able to really, really help them become a great actor?
Over time, yes. Now I don't. This is where actual training comes in, but technical training as an actor, which I don't, provide, but I can recommend, places to go for training. So it's a combination of the actual technical training with mindset work that can kind of make you the better. It's when you have that combination, you almost become unstoppable as an actor.
Right. Now, do you feel that maybe people are afraid of that success is why they self-sabotage sometimes?
Absolutely. Now, another thing about fear of success is that's another thing we don't realize we have, or that we possess, or what's going on, or what's actually playing a role here. It really boils down to a fear of change,
Mm,
in a sense, because when you're successful, your life is going to change, and sometimes you're going to get a lot of new obligations and new responsibilities, which can be a bit scary. Well, change is scary in general for a lot of human beings because we're so wired by comfort, and that and routine. So changing that routine is going to be very uncomfortable, and sometimes major successes means major changes in your life. And also, and I have a chapter about this in my book, relationships can change too in our lives. Sometimes our family and friends or so-called loved ones can be threatened by our success. And therefore, that can limit them, and when they're threatened by your success, they may start shooting you down. They may come up with, they think they're being helpful by like, oh, I'm going to, bring you back down to earth, or I'm going to give you some helpful advice. But that helpful advice is really their own insecurities coming out. And that can sometimes chip away on things because now you don't want to lose your family or your friends. So what better way to do that but playing it safe
right, right.
and not going for those opportunities?
Well, as a personal example, I wanted to first off move away from my hometown, and I wanted to go to. Well, I live outside of Houston, and we wanted to move to Austin, and I felt like I could grow out there. Houston was more confining to me. It was almost like a chain around my ankle. And
Hmm.
I had some relatives actually tell me, "Oh no, you don't want to do that. It's going to be too expensive and you don't know anybody out there." All these different excuses to try to hold me back.
Hmm.
But thankfully, I have a wonderful wife who was very supportive. She wanted to move out there as well. And we both said, "Hey, the heck with what everybody else thinks. Let's do it." And it was the best thing I ever did in my life outside of having kids and being married. And I was able to grow as a person. Now, granted, we
Hmm.
had to move back. Our parents, they're getting older and they're having a lot of health problems and they needed us to help take care of them. But once they're gone, I'm out here again.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the main thing because really, at the end of the day, we have to remember we need to be true to ourselves and do what we need to do, and sometimes that might mean spreading our wings, and doing what we need to do on our own path, and that may not be the best, most comfortable thing for our family members to experience, but at the end of the day, we have to stay focused on our own well-being and our own needs, and that can be challenging too. Because especially actors, a lot of times they're empaths, they're people that really care, and that's what helps them connect to characters, which can, you know, while being an empath, I believe can be a superpower, can also be, hold you back too.
You do help other folks are they able to get in touch with you and book a session or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, you can find me on social media. My website, albertbramante.com. They can get, in touch with me on LinkedIn, Instagram. Absolutely, if they want to work with me. 100%.
And what was the name of your book again?
It's called Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage through Performing Artists.
Where can folks get that book?
So you can get it on Amazon, and I have it in different formats. I have paperback, I have it on Kindle, ebook, and as well as audiobook. So you can get it on like Audible or Spotify or any place that just made your audiobooks.
Well, I'll make it easier for everyone, and I'll put all your links in the description. But Albert,
Well, thank you.
thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, again, thank you, Kyle, for so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
My pleasure. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network